Hello everyone, this is the Professor Z, and we have finally entered Season 4's coverage of Volume 14. Now, to my surprise, there are no timeline changes to accommodate the anime's decisions, and this is both good and bad. It's good since they're sticking to the source material. It's bad, however, since it kinda spoils some stuff from the film, and since there's no indication of the time skip at all, it might feel a little off to some anime onlys. Of course, I'll be going over all of this shortly, but there is one more thing I want to cover before jumping into that. There is one major translation issue in this episode, and I had previously mentioned this believing that it was just Madhouse changing the story, but after this episode it's clear that this has been a translation issue from the very start. So every time they say theocracy in this episode, they mean Holy Kingdom. I'm not 100% sure why this issue is occurring, but from what I understand, it's because the translations for Holy Kingdom and theocracy in Japanese to English are somewhat similar. So with all that out of the way, let's jump into Overlord Season 4, Episode 8. So as we get into it, I want to start off with the fact that the events here are told a little out of order compared to the light novel. The light novel goes Albedo's scene, then Xanax, and then Phillips, and they've messed with the order before in this season, but I feel like this change is detrimental to the story, and I'll explain that in just a few minutes. Now, the scene starts off with Zanuck and Ranier discussing the Holy Kingdom's ambassadors, and how they had to turn them away. Now, the reason he didn't meet with them was due to appropriate etiquette. Since the Holy Kingdom's envoy wasn't official, it wouldn't have been appropriate for the royal family to meet them right away. This is followed up with the fact that the kingdom couldn't send assistance due to their losses at the Katsuki Plains. The loss of manpower, about 2% of the total population and 4% of the male population, heavily damaged their harvest output as well. This left the kingdom with no ability to help the Holy Kingdom. This lack of action gave the Sorcerer's Kingdom the chance to assist. And since they already kind of spoiled this in the episode for some reason, the Sorcerer's Kingdom was able to defeat Jaldabaoth and save the Holy Kingdom. This allowed for the Sorcerer's Kingdom to provide humanitarian aid, which would be stored in the kingdom's storehouses and then slowly moved to the Holy Kingdom. This would allow for the Sorcerer's Kingdom to travel through the kingdom while proudly presenting their own flag, completely unopposed. The grain stored in the kingdom could be sold to the kingdom's people, however, since it was priced higher than average and the people thought it might be cursed, the grain never sold. However, with the kingdoms lacking grain production, it was only a matter of time before the prices in the kingdom soared, which would leave them to rely on the Sorcerer's Kingdom. With that out of the way, Ranier suggests that the kingdom become a vassal state, just like the Empire, which isn't much of an option since they can't prevent the nobles from rebelling like the Empire can. Zanuck then wishes that Marquis Raven would return, which Ranier, as if reading his mind, replies by telling him that Raven won't return, due to his experiences at the Katsuki Plains. The scene then ends with Ranier bringing up Zanuck fulfilling his promise from the end of Season 2. Now, there is a lot of conversation cut here about the Holy Kingdom, the food situation, and various other smaller topics. They were probably cut due to the time constraints and not wanting to spoil more about volumes 12 and 13. But it's the difference in how the scenes end that kind of annoy me. You see, as I said earlier, the original order was changed here, so you'd see Albedo receive the Holy Kingdom report first, and then Zanuck, at the end of this scene, would receive a similar report, and then finally, we'd get to see Philip and his master plan, and finally understand what the reports they had received was about. This isn't detrimental to the story, but I think it damages the overall delivery of these events, and honestly, it wouldn't have been that hard for them to do it the way it was originally intended, so I don't understand why they just didn't do it that way. That aside, we move on to everyone's least favorite character, Philip. Philip is drinking his woes away in the bar provided by Hilma. Then enter Barons Delvey and Rockerlin. Now, I feel like this isn't expressed very well in the anime, mainly because it was cut from the episode entirely, but Delvin and Rockerlin hate Philip. They're pretty much flattering him solely because he's the head of their faction. Now, after sitting down together, and Philip spilling some beer on Delvin, we learn why Philip is so distraught. With his big brain energy, Philip has come to the conclusion that raising cash crops instead of food for his people is a good idea. As context, the reason Philip so desperately wants his land to flourish is so he can pay back Hilma. He really doesn't want to owe her any favors. Delvin and Rockerlin agree with him and then praise his backer Hilma, who, fun fact, they know is a part of 8 Figures. Philip then says the first smart thing I think has ever appeared in his mind, that being, he'll remove the system that focuses solely on status instead of skill. After this spark of wisdom, we dumb things down to discuss Philip's connection to Albedo, which exists solely so Philip will be easily manipulated. We then get to the meat of this conversation. Philip is informed of the grain situation within the kingdom, specifically that the Sorcerer's Kingdom's caravans traveled directly through Delvin's territory. This information drives Philip mad with jealousy, and this is where he gets an idea. What is this idea? Well, the anime ain't gonna tell you, so I guess I will. So Philip's grand, supreme, amazing, spectacular, omega master plan is to take his unarmored and unarmed denizens of his territory to seize the contents of the Sorcerer's Kingdom's carriage. He hopes that by doing so would scare off the Sorcerer's Kingdom from selling grain in the kingdom while bringing justice for the kingdom. Now, Philip is able to rope in Delvin and Rockerland, but really, they plan on betraying Philip the first chance they get. Many of you are probably wondering, how the hell did this even work? And I'll tell you, it was by complete accident. You see, the merchant running the caravan was aware of Philip's place in the Sorcerer's King's plan. Unfortunately though, this made him believe that Philip's attack on the caravan was a part of the plan, so he just gave Philip the caravan. Yep, that's how it happened, and despite how dumb that is, it pretty much kickstarts the rest of the events in Volume 14. So it not being here in the anime is kind of baffling considering its importance to the story. It kinda reminds me of how they introduced Super Saiyan Blue. You don't see or know how it came to be, it just did. So we finally move away from Philip and move over to Albedo. Albedo is handling the various internal affairs of the Sorcerer's Kingdom, but despite her superb abilities, the lack of manpower is obvious. The issue isn't quantity but quality. The amount of people who meet Nazarik's standards are few and far between. Now, throughout this section of the light novel, there is a constant undertone of Albedo's dissatisfaction with her own lack of control. Specifically, she fears that Demiurge's growing information network could threaten her own plans. We don't know what these intentions are, but it is somehow related to the anti-player hit squad which Ainz gave her permission to create back in Volume 7. For anime-onlys, or for those of you who've forgotten, this squad is comprised of Albedo's younger sister, Rubedo, the strongest NPC in Nazarik, alongside Pandora's actor, and 15 other level 80+ monsters. With that out of the way, Albedo is faced with a document regarding the the Holy Kingdom, and its contents baffle her. Cutting over to Irantel, we get a glimpse of the new dragon delivery system led by Shaltir, which is honestly a better fate for the dragons than being turned into crafting materials for Ainz's amusement. In one of the streets of Irantel, Ainz, Momon, played by Pandora's actor, and Nabe are walking together to show the people their positive relationship. Along the street, people are getting out of their way and bowing. Something quick that I want to mention, during this section in the light novel, Ainz ponders the importance of spies and how Nazarik lacks a sufficient workforce in this area. This is why Nazarik is investing in human spies that are being trained by Hanzos and Tira, the triplet sister of Tia and Tina. It's understandable why they cut this, I just thought it was something interesting worthy of note. Ainz then addresses Nabe and asks about the orphanage that is now being run by Yuri. The group decides to go visit it when Ainz is suddenly contacted by Intoma. Ainz is being asked to return to Nazarik for an emergency meeting. Upon returning, Ainz is met by all of the Guardians, and they jump right into the reason for the meeting. Before we move forward, yet another small note. In the light novel, the group does not meet in the throne room, but instead in an adjacent room created by the NPCs. There are two reasons for this. The first is because the throne room is so large that Ainz feels uncomfortable meeting so few people in such a large space. The second and most important reason is that the throne room contains a world-class item, and Ainz would like to limit its exposure. It wouldn't surprise me if even some light novel readers didn't know about this item, since it was revealed in an Overlord side story and not the main novels. The world-class item in question is actually the throne, an item known as the Throne of Kings, so you can understand why Ainz wouldn't meet people like Hilma while atop is such a powerful item. But budget, time, etc. keeps animators from portraying these small details. Back to it though, as Ainz asks Albedo about this meeting, he notices that Albedo is being very vague with her words. She states that a noble is involved, and that their grain convoy was plundered, but doesn't state any specifics. Ainz believes that this might have been caused by his own mistakes, but it's really because Philip is a moron. Albedo, having already gathered the required information, has Hilma, Philip's caretaker, brought forward. Hilma is adamant that she had nothing to do with Philip's actions, and to verify this, Ainz uses dominate. A dominated individual cannot lie to the caster, and through this, Ainz verifies that Hilma had nothing to do with the grain robbery. Despite this, Albedo believes that Hilma, as Philip's superior, should still take responsibility. Luckily for Hilma though, Ainz doesn't believe that Hilma is completely at fault for these events. And if the superior is meant to take the fall, then shouldn't Ainz, as the absolute superior, take responsibility? Thanks to Ainz, Hilma is sent off with a light punishment. And thanks to Ainz's actions, he now has a new superfan. So the only major thing to mention about the following scene is the thing Hilma mentions. The thing in question is the torture method used by Nazarick to bring Eight Fingers into submission. The method is having them take a dip in the cockroach pit for a while and then healed on repeat for a very long time. So yeah, now that Hilma has experienced Ainz's mercy, she's kinda got a thing for him, to the point that she wishes to one day be a direct subordinate to him, just like the NPCs. Ainz and the Guardians then move on to what they're gonna do now that Philip has messed things up. Ainz, of course, has Albedo explain the plan so everyone, including himself, can understand it. Surprisingly, this plan is initially presented by a person outside of Nazarick. It was Renier. We already know that she's turned on them, so I don't feel bad for saying this. The plan, though, was to pretty much ruin the kingdom to the point where they openly accepted the Sorcerer's Kingdom's invasion. Shaltir asks why they don't just use Philip's attack as a catalyst for war. But the plan was meant to take over without a major conflict. Albedo and Demiurge begin to believe that a schemer greater than themselves had appeared. But Ainz, in his infinite wisdom, realizes that Philip just acted without thinking. Kakutis then asks why they needed Philip at all, and why not just use the smarter nobles in the first place. While they had already recruited some capable nobles, they were using Philip so that cleaning up the useless ones would be easier later on. Despite this, now that Philip has attacked, what is a proper punishment? Well, the Guardians believe the best punishment is death, for both Philip and those of the kingdom. However, the words of Ainz keep the Guardians from taking action. Words that Ainz definitely remembers saying. In order to conform to Ainz's words, their current plans will have to be put on hold in order to modify them appropriately. However, Ainz isn't sure that the plan should be changed based solely off something he said, so he asks if the plan truly needs to be changed. Demiurge, with his small brain, only now realizes the giga brain that is Ainz, and understands that what Ainz truly wants is to punish the kingdom as a parallel to the mercy that he showed the Empire. And with Ainz's completely intentional plan, the Sorcerer's Kingdom is now going to war with the kingdom. Speaking of the kingdom, a little whiles later, that's where we're heading next, as the nobles gather to discuss the declaration of war that they have now received. On the document are the stamps of all parties who have approved of the Sorcerer's Kingdom's declaration. There are 6 in total: the Sorcerer's Kingdoms, the Empires, the Draconic Kingdoms, which is a country we've only ever really glimpsed at in the light novels, the Dwarven Kingdoms, the Holy Kingdoms, and finally is the stamp of a powerful individual from the Holy Kingdom, known as the Faceless One. They are someone that we will meet in the Overlord film, so I will avoid spoiling anything. The only countries that didn't approve of the war are the Council State and the Theocracy. Even if the events that led to the declaration were caused by a third party, Zanuck is right that this is the fault of the kingdom. And despite only a short period of time having passed, Zanuck has already found that it was Philip who caused all of this. However, they can't rule out the possibility that Philip was under the effect of magic, and so they call him forward in order to verify this. Zanuck, however, proposes that they use Philip's head as a starting point for the future negotiations. Ramposa is completely against the idea though, despite it making complete sense to do so. Honestly, a good chunk of the nobles hate you anyway, Ramposa, so this may actually be a good thing. Zanuck continues to strain the fact that it's plain insanity to fight the Sorcerer's Kingdom, and he is 100% right to think that way. The Minister of Internal Affairs agrees with Zanuck and even proposes vassalage, just as the Empire had done before them. Ramposa rejects this proposal, however, because it would insult those who protected the kingdom up until this point. Now, I understand where he's coming from, but it's pretty much just trading the lives of his current citizens for the honor of the dead, which is really stupid. However, Ramposa has got a plan, but it's interrupted as a soldier arrives to inform them that Albedo is on her way to the capital. Now, real fast, after Ramposa proposes his plan, Zanuck actually begins thinking about usurping the throne from his father in order to go through with his sacrifice Philip plan, which I am completely behind. Now, during the credits, we get a brief exchange between Ramposa and Albedo. Of course, Albedo is here about the stolen grain, which Ramposa immediately apologizes for, but what comes next is what shocks everyone. Ramposa offers up his own head in exchange for forgiveness. This was his plan all along, and with this, the episode comes to an end. So this episode was interesting. As I've already said, the order of events was changed at the beginning, which I think weakened the overall story. There's also the missing events, which involved Philip's master plan, which was kind of a weird cut. But honestly, the thing that was hit the most was just dialogue. There's so much world building cut from this episode that it's honestly kinda hard to cover it all. It's not that it's required to tell the story, but it being absent changes the mood of some scenes and overall just damages the story. But that's all from me. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos going forward, and comment down below about what you thought of this episode. As always though, this has been the Professor Z, and I will see you all next time.